Hey there, if you have tried a ketogenic or a low carb diet and you feel like your body just won't get with the program and it wasn't beneficial for you, then this may be of interest. I have probably 1 to 2 patients a week come to me needing help with figuring out why they do not benefit when eating lower carb or a ketogenic lifestyle, when we know that there is research supporting it, and many women anecdotally say they feel better eating in these particular ways of dietary protocols. So why is it that some women don't benefit and others do? I was seeing this over and over again, and it was also my lived experience. Years ago, I tried a keto diet and I felt terrible, and I actually had weight gain. All my friends were losing and feeling great, and I felt terrible. And so I really sympathize with these patients and have started to dig a little deeper and looking at patterns in the DNA testing of patients that have this as one of their chief complaints. And lo and behold, one thing that I found was that many of these women have multiple variants of a gene that is PLIN1. And this particular gene makes a protein called perilipin, which sits and covers, it's a protein that covers fat cells. And it essentially decides whether or not the fat cell is going to be used as energy or essentially sort of resistant to breakdown or lipolysis. And what I thought was so interesting about this is that I see this over and over again in these genetic profiles. In the people that seem to do really, really well with a lower carb diet, they don't have multiple copies of this genetic variant. So it's a pretty widespread variant. A lot of people actually have it, but maybe they are heterozygous for it and they're not homozygous for multiple variants, meaning you have 2 copies of that same allele. So it's really interesting that there is something there. And I started looking more into it to see if there was a lot of research done, and there's not necessarily research done, or there isn't research done other than my own, I think, with regard to lipedema and this particular genetic variant. But there's a ton of research about how dietary protocols impact people that carry multiple copies of this variant. In fact, there was a study here in Nutrition Research in February of 2025. Variants in PLIN1 are associated with obesity, diabetes, metabolic syndrome, and influence the composition in adults with obesity. The study basically goes on to talk about what diets may be better for people that carry this variant. And what I thought was so interesting after reading through multiple journal articles is that people that carry this variant actually can become more insulin resistant on a high fat diet. They have less fat breakdown on a high fat diet. And even more frustratingly is that on a high fat diet, they can lose little to no weight, even when in a calorie deficit. That is enough to drive anybody absolutely insane and feel frustrated. And I definitely feel that for all these patients that are struggling and have been doing a strict protocol and didn't see really any results. In fact, it was working opposite of what their genetics say they should be eating. So if you carry this variant, what should you do? You should really focus on complex carbohydrates so that you limit the impactful carbs. When we eat carbs that are more processed or refined, unfortunately, we absorb more of that starch, and that has more of a blood sugar and insulin response, and that makes us even more fat storing in terms of our hormone response. So every food that we eat is a chemical messenger to our body hormonally. And unfortunately, depending on your genetic variants, sometimes you can be plugging into the wrong thing and think you're doing a great thing, but it's working against your genetics. And so I don't know what the prevalence of this is in the lipedema community. I haven't even actually scored it within my own patient population. It's just something that I'm seeing a lot of, and I'm going back and looking at other people that maybe are a little bit more weight resistant and looking to see what their usual dietary intake is And if we can work to figure out a way for them to be on a nutrition plan that's better for their body genetically. And I wanted to share because I'm sure that if I'm seeing this in a good part of the lipedema population, there are many, many more of you out there. And I think the research is just coming in on so many of these different genetic things that unfortunately can impact lipedema women. There is no one best diet for lipedema, and that is a hill I'm going to die on. I hope this is helpful. I will see you next time. Bye-bye.